Right, welcome to Ignite. So, quick survey. Who's a cat owner here? Remember cat owners? Come on, I know you're here. Some of you came from the West Coast. What happens when you put your cat in a box? You ever put your cat in a box? They love it, don't they? They look around. I mean, you interacted with them, so there must be food involved. So they're going to look for the food first. But once they discover there's no food, they just get comfortable. They'll sit in that box, they'll look around. Oh, it's like, oh, I've got a wall there. I've got a wall there. Wall. Oh, I'm safe. I'm safe. That means I can go to sleep. Ever seen a cat do that? They won't climb in the box on their own. They probably won't like it when you put it in there. But once they've figured out that they're safe, they're going to go to sleep. We're not so different, especially in the tech world. We like to have our walls around us. We like to see solid boundaries and know that we're safe within them. And so we build up these boxes, and then we fall asleep. We also look for food, but the important part of this metaphor is we fall asleep within our box. We all have a box. What's your box? What's your organization's box? What's your company's box? You have a wall up that says, oh, we're a .NET shop. I'm safe. I don't have to go past that wall. It's .NET. Is it not .NET? No, we're a .NET shop. Have you got processes? Every project must follow this process. That's a wall. Can't get past it. Is it true? Maybe it's true, but your wall is there. Makes you feel safe, but you can't get past it. Who writes code? Only our developers write code. Those accountants, those marketing people, no, they don't write code. It's only the developers. What school did you go to for your CS degree? These are our boxes. We build these boxes around us. We get comfortable in them. We feel safe in them. And then we fall asleep. We get closed in. And no side outside the box. But just like always, and no joke, I could get up every single Ignite for the next 15 years and say exactly the same thing. The world is changing, and we have no choice but to open that box and take a look out. There are opportunities outside of the boxes that we've built ourselves into that we need to be seeing, we need to be taking advantage of. Otherwise, we stagnate, we get stuck, we get trapped. I work at Microsoft. There's a delicious irony when I say that. But I'm sure you've all noticed the difference since we started looking outside of our box, right? There are opportunities outside of your box. Once you stick your head out and look around, you have the chance to take advantage of these, which you don't as long as you're safe and comfortable and asleep in the box. You have opportunities to diversify, to take advantage of new ideas, new structures, new architectures that otherwise you may not have considered because they don't exist beyond the wall that you've built up. You've got an opportunity to accelerate. You may be moving slower because of the walls you've built up for yourself, for your organization. And you've got opportunities to be more inclusive, to bring in people, to bring in other ideas that would otherwise be stuck outside the box and never make their way in. This is a session about Python, and the reason that I go through all this introduction is because I am going to show to you that Python is one great tool that will help you achieve all three of these things. It's not the only tool. You started with tools that work within your box, but to break outside of that, things may have to change. You'll have to add things. Different tools will let you take advantages of different opportunities. I believe Python will help you take advantage of all three of these. So this is an overview talk. I'm not going to go super in-depth. If you want to go super in-depth, come find me afterwards. I'll be in the expo. Happy to chat as deep as you like. But this is the quick overview. Python's a scripting language. Unlike a language with a compiler where you kick off the build and wait for 10 hours and come back and it's ready to go, Python, you kick it off and it runs. Also means it's higher level, simpler language, easier to get certain things done. It's a free open source product. It's not something that Microsoft has built and is selling to you. It's been around for about 25 years now, totally owned by the community, developed by volunteers, some of them sponsored by their employers. And it's completely open source. There's no vendor lock-in going on here. It's a huge ecosystem. Python's an incredibly popular language, and it has many, many hundreds of thousands of packages available, nearly all of which are completely open source, completely free. And it's very well used and supported. The list of companies whose businesses completely rely on Python as a language is very impressive. This is a very small sample of a much larger slide that wasn't going to reproduce well here. So there's three things that we want to try and achieve. We know that monocultures are bad, right? Everyone's, it's 2016, we all know that. That goes for tools and languages and development methodologies as much as any other potential monoculture. When you get stuck in the we're a .NET shop, when you get stuck in we only do JavaScript, even if you get stuck in we only do Python, that's bad too. You need to branch out from that to have those tools. It's a really old, painful analogy, but when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You've got a hammer. If you're going to get a second tool for your toolbox, don't get another hammer. Get something that looks different. If you have a hammer, it's got a blunt edge. Get a chisel. It's got a sharp edge. Different tools, different jobs. This is how Python, I suspect for most of you, will help really diversify the tools that you have available. Not every project is or should be one language. There are different jobs, different roles, different tasks, different things to achieve. And there's a right language for each one of these. There's multiple right languages for each one of these. It's probably most accurate to say there are wrong languages for most of these, and that's more important than which ones are right. But the thing that's really helping us deal with this in a very positive, beneficial way these days is the advent of cloud and the advent of microservices. It's so easy now to build up an entire application out of microservices, little single-task programs that do one thing that are mostly independent from everything going on around them. You don't have to have one big makefile for your entire project anymore, and there's no good reason why you should. You don't have to write a 1,000 node service in the one language. You can diversify. You can choose the right tool for the right job. The tools that Microsoft offers here for these, things like Azure App Service, very easy to get small, quick web apps, REST APIs up without worrying too much about how it's going to integrate with the rest of your code, because the boundaries are well defined. It's HTTP, it's REST, SOAP, whatever you happen to be using. Azure Functions, serverless is the buzzword there. We're going serverless. You don't even think about deploying something. You just say, here is my code, and it gets run. And if you want that code run 1,000 times in parallel, it just runs 1,000 times in parallel. We're getting there. And Docker is the buzzword, and now Windows containers are the other side to this, which I keep running into people that have heard of Docker, they're not sure how to apply it. This is how you apply it. You don't deploy one Docker container, you deploy 100 different ones that come together to do one big thing. So I'm going to dive into a quick demo here. This is a fairly abbreviated demo, I'll be honest, because it's a short session. This is probably a 20-minute demo if I do everything. Instead, I'm doing the 10-minute version, hopefully. What I have here is my existing app. I have one big service, my main service that does everything that I need. And that's running, that's already deployed on Azure. You can see in Cloud Explorer here. I have an instance of that. If I jump over, this is my Contoso user service, which, as you can see, is ridiculously complex and over-engineered. Probably don't want to change anything. Who has a service like this that they work on? Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm sorry. Mine isn't really that complex. It's a demo. But I feel bad for you guys. So the interesting thing about this service is not the cheesy Bootstrap template front page. It's the REST API. And I know you can't see this too well, but I've got an API users endpoint that's going to give me a list of users. And then if I go for any one of those users, it's going to send back some XML, which I know just made everyone really happy, in response to that. So the reason I'm coming to this app today is it's past the year 2000. We shouldn't be using XML. We should be using what? JSON. Yeah, XML for millennials. So I want to change this web app to, instead of returning XML, to return JSON. As we saw, it's ridiculously complicated. I don't want to dive into the code for it at all. So instead, I'm going to write a proxy. So I have my existing app here, and I'm going to add a new project to this, which is going to be essentially a microservice, a little proxy that will take the XML, transform it into JSON, and return it, and let me update all of my callers to this with one new URL and get the new API. So I'll start by adding a new project. In this case, I'm adding a Python project, and it's going to be a blank bottle web project. We'll add it to the existing solution. This is Visual Studio 15 preview, just so you know. You can't currently get all of the features that I'm going to show you today, but very soon you'll be able to in the next update that we push out. So there's some new stuff coming in here. And I'm going to call this the Contoso Proxy site. This is just a really basic template. I don't want any of that right now. That is just a very simple web API. If you've used Bottle before, Python has a whole lot of web frameworks. Bottle is one that I like because it's very simple. These are my two routes right here, which do something vaguely useful, but I'm actually going to change them. What I want is to take that API users route and get the response from the main host and send that one back instead. So I can do this as simply as saying API users. And instead of doing this, I'm going to return from the requests library and I'm going to need to import the requests library because that is not actually imported yet. So I have a light bulb here to import requests. We'll insert that automatically. I'll use an environment variable to get the host from, and you'll see why in a little bit. And I'm just going to get API users and return the content from that. So that's my proxy for the API users. That's just going to return the list. It's already a plain list. That's what we want. A second one is going to take a specific user, API users name, which I think we called it ID in the other system. It doesn't matter. We're not passing that through. This is going to take whatever name is passed there, pass it in as a parameter, which means I can do much the same code here to get the data from the original host. This is going to be the XML version. And if I just return that data, then I've done nothing. I've done a very simple proxy. It's going to block a whole lot of other things. If I wanted to add authentication here, I could do stuff like that. This is its own entirely separate web service. So I could add anything I want at this point. I can transform the data in any way I want. I can restrict callers any way I want. I can throttle. I have complete control over what goes on here. And the really nice thing is, if I end up running this very close to the original machine, then there's going to be little performance impact from the fact that we're proxying. But the thing that I want to do now is take this XML data and convert it into JSON. Bottle's really nice. It's going to let me just return a dictionary, and it will convert that to JSON for me. But to convert it from the XML, I'm going to use a built-in class called ElementTree, which, again, I'll use the light bulb to import that. And we'll just use that to parse the data into XML. This is going to give me an iterable object that has all of the tags. If I jump back to the example, this will give me an object representing user, so from the root tag. And all of the elements inside it will be iterable, and they have a tag, which is their name, text, which is the content. That's all I want to return. So I want a dictionary that is going to contain, this is the level 300 part of Python with a dictionary comprehension. That's simple. So now I'm doing the XML transform, turning it into JSON, returning it back, and that's all I've had to write. Let's see how it works. So I'm going to grab the URL for the actual host so I can set that environment variable locally and we can test it. Let me just copy that, add a Cloud Explorer. Project properties here, I will set host equals that, set as startup. And we'll start running this web service. So that's popped up, and I don't have a home page. I didn't set a route, so that's expected. If I go API users, we have gone and grabbed exactly the same data and forwarded that through. If I go to a specific one, let's go to Simon, you can see that I now have JSON instead of the XML. If we want to have a closer look at what's going on here, I insert a breakpoint in this route, and let's go get Matthew this time. And now I'm inside Visual Studio. I can step through Python code, see exactly what's going on. I can see from the data that I have the expected XML is being sent back. When I step over the parsing statement, I now have this XML iterable that has 3 elements with the tag and the value. And then the last step is going to do the transform, which gives me the JSON that I expected. Now, obviously, an important part of this is actually getting it running in the cloud, because running it locally is not actually any benefit. We'd have to put that onto every single machine, and that's not the aim. So there are 2 pieces involved here. Some of you may have noticed the resource group project. I'm deploying using an Azure resource template for Resource Manager, so that includes the definition of my existing web service, any databases, storage accounts, whatever else I'm setting up. It does most of the configuration. So I need to add a new site into that for this deployment. I also need some code to actually deploy from the Python code to Azure. For Python, we do it a little bit differently than other languages do. The main reason being that most Python developers are not working on Windows, they're not working in Visual Studio, but we still want them to deploy to Azure. So we have a way to add a deployment script into a project. This is a cross-platform tool called Cookie Cutter, but I'm going to do it from within Visual Studio. This is a new feature. This is coming in the next update for Visual Studio 15. I'll search for all my Azure templates, and here is the deployment script that I want. So I'm going to kick this off. It's going to make me choose a few options. I want to drop these files. Let me copy the path here into this directory. Lets me choose the Python version to deploy. So the latest 352, 64-bit. My site name is Contoso Proxy. I do want to install requirements. Oh, I missed this. I better get this right or it's not going to work. When I imported requests, I started using a third-party library, so I need to add that to my list of requirements. So I simply do that. Now when I deploy and we install the dependencies, it's going to pull down that third-party library as well. If you're familiar with Python and packaging, you know that this is always a risky endeavor. It's actually getting much, much better. So I'm happy to chat about that later on if you're nervous about dependencies. And the last thing I'm going to set up is my site type is using WSGI. We have 2 options for sites running on app service, which, again, come chat to me for more detail. The point is that I have added some new files. Unfortunately, you get to witness a bug here where things don't get added automatically. But I'm sure you'll understand. So I've added the web config. If you're familiar with IIS, you know what these are. This is going to make sure that we're running with Python, but it's also added this deployment script, which is written in Python. So I can run this deployment script from any platform, any operating system, and it will push this code from my site up to Azure and update it and get everything running. It also has a README, so I didn't forget the big chunk of code that I need to throw into my template. Again, if you're familiar with Azure Resource Management templates, this will not be surprising to you. If you're not familiar with it, and you're still deploying to Azure the old way, oh man, learn these things. These are so cool. I'm just going to take this and paste it into my list of resources. So now I just added another site to my deployment. When I go redeploy this, it's going to create that site. That host environment variable, I need to set here as well. So there's an example here for that. And I'm going to concat a few strings together because I know what the site should be. Variables, website name. There are other ways to get the host name from a deployed site that involve a lot more typing than I was prepared to do right now. So this is the cheats way. But now I have an updated template. I can go to my resource group and say deploy and redeploy it. And that's going to go through and create that site, configure all the settings, get Python installed on it, ready to go. To save time, I've already done that. So what I'm simply going to do is come and run this deployment script so that we can see the deployment. First thing it does is ask for my publishing profile. Again, it's cross-platform. We can't magically pick up stuff the same way. But with Cloud Explorer, it's really easy to get the publishing profile. Just right-click and say download. And assuming internet is not going to go bad on me. Internet might be going bad on me right now. There we go. So I'll drop that in there. And we'll run the deployment. So this does the copy, essentially. Right now, this is, let's call it beta. It's doing a straight copy. It's not doing a smart copy. We're not checking date timestamps yet. For the sake of this demo, that would take longer. But that's certainly planned before we start calling this, hey, this is absolutely final, ready to go. But this is where we're heading. We're getting to a place for Python where deployment is completely cross-platform. You don't need to be running on Windows. You don't need to be running on Visual Studio. You can manage and update your Python website from wherever you want. The pip install is running on the server. That's grabbing the third-party packages that we asked for. So requests and bottle will be there. That will be done shortly. And when it is, I'm going to be able to go to, there we go. My site is up and running. So now I can go to this original page and rename the site. So like I said, it's one simple change of a subdomain in this case. And now I'm hitting my proxy service rather than the main one, and we get our JSON back. So that's a very quick way, small amount of code to take a big, scary web service that you don't want to touch and actually change its behavior with a microservice in a very simple way using a small amount of Python code. Does anyone want to ask any questions about that before I move on? So when I ran the deployment, there was a prompt asking for the publishing profile path. If you go to Cloud Explorer and right-click any deployed site, there's a download publish profile button there. When you click on that, it downloads it to your downloads folder. It'll pop that open. All I did from there was drag the file into the command prompt. And little trick, which a lot of people don't know, if you drag and drop a file into command prompt, it pastes the path, which is really handy. So that's how I got the path in there really quickly. But it was just download publish profile, drop the path into the Python script. And the script will remember that, by the way. If I go redeploy it again, it remembers the path of the script, and it'll redeploy to the same place without prompting, in a way that is not going to get checked into version control and compromise the security of your website. Did that on purpose. Any other questions? All right. So that's diversifying with Python. It says accelerate. I'm not promising that Python will make your code faster. It's possible. And certainly in a lot of domain-specific applications, there's a way to genuinely make your code faster than handcrafted C code using Python. That's not what I'm promising here in the general case. What I am promising is something far more valuable. Your developers will spend less time building it. These days, the cost of having a developer spend an extra day is getting close to the cost of upgrading the hardware that's running it and canceling out the entire effect of having someone optimize it. The more you can do to cut down the amount of time your developers spend working on something, the far more efficient you are as an organization. Python's a great language for this because it's going to make sure that your developers can move quickly when they should. And again, monocultures are bad. If you use Python for everything, at some point it's going to hurt you. But if you use Python in the right place, then it's going to accelerate the things that should be accelerated. So the big idea, not every project has the same software development lifecycle. Who remembers Waterfall? Spiral? Dual V? Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that some people here don't remember them because they're kind of out of fashion now. When I was at university, it was basically a history class at that point. Sorry if that makes people feel old. I'm feeling it as well, guys. Not every project needs to follow that. Not every project needs you to go off and do the Prince2 analysis or whatever it is you're planning to do. Some projects are legitimately micro projects. The one that I just did not require 5 days worth of requirements analysis and design and planning before implementing something that worked. And so many projects that your developers will end up doing, internal websites, internal line of business apps, data analysis scripts, log scraping scripts. So many projects that if you force a software development lifecycle on them, they'll never get done. Python is a great language for quick development and long maintenance. It's a great language for spiking something and then keeping that thing running for a long period of time without having a lot of code craft, without bit rot. It's a really well-designed language for being able to maintain code in the face of change. So let's have a look at how that's going to work. Yep, not yet. Yes, there's more cat photos. So I have here a very simple script that does a report generation. It's when I run this, it's going to read our current database of dogs and the somersaults that they've done, and it's going to report on the best somersaults and the best dogs. So if I hit F5 and run this, you can see we have a report here of all of the dogs and the heights of the somersaults they did, because I had that data set laying around and wanted to use it for something. That's not true, it's random numbers. But it's a bit of fun. So we have this report being generated. And this, this gets run once a day and gets printed out and sent to some really important VP somewhere who's very upset that his recs did not win every single month. But right now, this month, he's actually more upset that the library we're using to generate this report was apparently made somewhere in the British Empire. And so not only is he upset about recs, he's just flat out confused what day it is. And we've been told to fix it. Obviously, I'm not applying a software development lifecycle here. This is a bug fix. Bug fix. I need to figure out where that formatting is coming from and change it. Because as you can see, in the code that I wrote, I don't get very much. I call out to generate the report in someone else's library, and they generate it and give me back the report. So I need to figure out what's going on here. To do that, I'll start with a breakpoint, and we'll go stepping through. So we get the first line comes back. We start going through the list of dogs. We're iterating. We're doing some formatting here. We've got the string. You can see here's our dog. It's checkers. The day is 15th of February. Where is that being turned into something? This looks like the dog. Yep, that's checkers. Oh, here we go. Here we're formatting the day. OK, so it's not locale aware, obviously. I could have done a locale aware one, which would have made everything fine. We're just doing a straight format. We're putting the day in position 0, the month in 1, the year in position 2, and saying that's the date. So now I've found the place I can stop debugging here. The easy fix is to just do this. And now it's fixed. So I've gone ahead and changed someone else's code. And if I run it now, you can see we have good old American-style dates. But the problem with this is that when that other team updates their library and we get a new version, we've got to make the fix again. And that other team is prolific. They're making a fix every single day. So every single day we get their new update. We have to go make the fix again. And because they are somewhere in the British Empire, they're making it in the middle of the night, which means someone is on call and getting a call every 2 a.m. that the report is. We don't want to do that. We want a fix that is independent from what their code is actually doing. What I'm about to show you is something that gets frowned upon at a lot of Python conferences. It's something that Python is really good at. It's something that real people actually really use, but it's not very pure. So just be aware of that. This is like, have I got C++ developers here? This is like the equivalent of a const cast, what I'm doing here. It's kind of dirty. We don't talk about it, but when you need it, you need it. So what I'm actually going to do is have a look at this class. It's the day class. And I'm going to take this string method. This is a method that does the formatting. I'll go back to my code, and I'm going to make a fixed version of it here. So now I've fixed it, but the problem is it's not on the right class anymore. So what I want to do is every time we go and use the day class, instead of calling the day's toString method, we're going to call our toString method instead. All the C++ and COM developers are thinking vtables now. Love you guys, but this is so much nicer. I'm going to get, so the day class is the one that I want. Again, I can use the light bulb, and I'll just get the import there. And you can see that it has this struer method on it. If I go to definition here, then we'll see that it is, in fact, the one that I just copied. And I'm just going to go ahead and reassign it. This is probably a confusing name now, so let's rename this to be day struer. But now I've renamed it. So now if I do a go to definition here, it's going to say, oh, you've got two definitions going on. Because I do, because I've replaced the definition of essentially the toString method of this class. I can set a breakpoint here now. And just for fun, let's go back to the other one, set a breakpoint here. And now when I run, you'll see our one is the one being called. Every time, we're never hitting the other one at all. And all the dates are formatted correctly. Up until the point where the other library renames their day class, which is a really big breaking change for them, or they stop using the toString method, which again is a silly thing to change, we're fine. We're immune to whatever changes they want to make. We'll simply replace them every time, and we don't have to go into their code, apply patches, make changes. In terms of long-term maintenance, when you're dealing with especially third-party libraries that don't belong to you or your company, this is a trick that's fairly unique to Python that is invaluable for keeping things running. That was dirty. Don't ask me too many questions about it. I'm going to go take a shower now. But does anyone have any questions about maintaining long-term maintenance of apps with Python? Cool. Who does the coding in your org? They get a title that says programmer. Is that exclusive? I think the easiest way to figure this out is see how many people in program management or project management or finance, accounting are trying to become developers. Because if they're all trying to become developers, then there's a chance that they want to be developers and they're simply not being included. Not every programmer these days has a CS degree. Python in particular is being used in primary schools to teach kids how to program. Big Python conferences regularly have groups of 10, 12-year-olds learning how to program in Python. You don't need a CS degree to program these days. But everyone does need to program, because what happens when you outgrow Excel? I know this happens. I met a property manager who outgrew Excel and needed to learn coding. If a property manager has to outgrow Excel, your accountants have to outgrow Excel. Around Microsoft, I'm aware of accountants using Python because they've outgrown Excel. I'm aware of lawyers using Python because they've outgrown their other tools. It turns out Python, with a set of really common standard libraries these days, is a really great interactive data analysis platform. And there's a number of companies, again, I picked the biggest ones I could find to call out that rely on Python for data analysis. If any of these companies has called you up and said, we detected fraud on one of your credit cards, they probably did that with Python. And the way that we're doing that these days is using Jupyter. So Jupyter is an interactive data analysis platform. It's in the browser. It's entirely browser-based. If you start thinking, I'll show you in a minute, but if you start thinking in terms of the Word web app and the Excel web app mixed together with Python code, you're getting fairly close. It supports a huge range of languages. Python, R, many more. You can use C#, you can use F#, JavaScript. There is lots more. I'd just be listing off every language I know at this point. And the neat thing is, it has code inline, it has text inline, and when you do the results of that, it will give you plots, it will give you charts, it will give you tables, all inline, all rendered nicely based on the code that you've written, and the code never disappears. So it's like you've done a research paper and included everything you were meant to include in the research paper instead of putting it all in appendices, but it's right there inline in context. And again, this is not a Microsoft product. It's free and open source. It's largely being built out of Berkeley for the last 15 years. But what Microsoft does have, and again, this is preview, but it's accessible now. So if you want to try and crash the site before my demo, go ahead. What we have is an online service for this. We're building it up, securing it, making an enterprise quality Jupyter service currently called notebooks.azure.com is the site. This is preview stage. It's preview stage. It's not finished. It's not solid. Don't move your core business onto it yet. But if you're interested, especially after my demo and moving your core business to it, come and chat. I'll get you in touch with the people because we're looking for pilot partners to be able to build up and see how this would work for you. So let's have a look at this. So this is the front page of the site. Azure Notebooks. Again, we've made the nice pretty one. We have a whole set of sample notebooks, which I'm going to run through one of them here. But the idea is essentially that you have, again, think Word web apps, think Excel web apps, and OneDrive all mixed together, but for code, but for data analysis. That's what we're talking about here. And one of the samples that I have is a library. Who's familiar with LIGO? A couple of people? Yeah, they did all of their data analysis using Jupyter. All of the reports they put out and published were from this tool. And we obviously went and chatted to them and said, hey, this is cool. Can we host some of your samples as a sample? And they said, sure, go ahead. So we've got some of their notebooks here available, which you can go and grab and look at and play with. You can easily, quickly preview them. And whoa, zoomed in. And now my formatting's messed up because I was zoomed in. But this is an example. This is a static render of the notebook. So you can see it's formatted, there's links, there's cross-links within the page, and there's code. There's no output right now. So what I need before doing that is to sign in. Give me 1 second to sign in, because apparently I got signed out. And you can preview the next slide. There we go. So I'm going to open this, and now I'm actually in Jupyter. So this is the open source product. We're hosting it on Azure, which means zero install, which means we maintain it, we keep everything updated. We'll provide the hardware. Right now it's free, and as I said, early preview, we're looking for potential partners to figure out how this becomes something that you work into your processes. But in this case, I can edit it now. So if I double-click into one of these cells, it goes from the nice formatted text into the raw source. This is just Markdown. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. But it's all editable, and it's executable now. So if I come down to this code and start hitting Shift-Enter, it's going to start executing and running this results. And I'll just go down until I get something pretty. Second a plot, nope. And when you do make plots, you get charts showing up in line. And this is, as I said, this is being used for real research. This is not, a pretty presentation tool. This is how LIGO found their gravity wave. These are the analysis, and this is some of the publication. Obviously, they've dressed this up a bit. Nicely formatted text and all that. If I start running through everything else, this platform has been under development for a long time. It's got a lot of contributors and a lot of different cool things added into it. So the coolest thing that I'm going to show you here, there's all sorts of interactive elements. You can set up a plot with a slider, drag things around and re-render it for analysis. It's very interactive. Like I said, it's called Jupyter, Jupyter with a Y. If you look it up online, you will find thousands of demos, thousands of videos. And if you go notebooks.azure.com, you can play with one right now. It just requires a free login. More charts. The really cool thing in this one that I like is we've actually rendered some audio. So I can hit play on this, and hopefully, there we go. That's an audio representation. Let's play it again. That is, I think it's which one of these guys? That blip, rendered in audio. So, don't know if that's me. So that's Jupyter. So what box are you stuck in? What walls do you have up around you? Are you stuck on one language? Are you stuck on one set of tools? You don't have to be. Just showing you Visual Studio, Azure, supporting Python. Are you stuck in one process? Are you building things the same way every time and not accounting for the differences in the project, the differences in the goals? How quickly does it have to be built? When does it have to be ready? How long are you going to maintain it? Do you have a wall up that is only our developers code? No one else codes. No one else needs to code. Are you intentionally or unintentionally excluding people from the ability to do deeper analysis, more powerful analysis, produce better reports, produce better science, produce better analysis by cutting them out of access to a language like Python? As I said at the start, there's a number of tools that will help with any of these. Python is a tool that will help with all of them. It will give you that opportunity to diversify your tools and code, the opportunity to accelerate projects that should be accelerated, and the opportunity to include people that ought to be included, and the opportunity to jump out of your box. Thank you.